Hello there, my name is Flicker. I'm a concept originating from outside this dimension. And I don't know if my host is the creator of me, or just a host I managed to get in touch with by accident. But hey, we're both here, so sup. In any case, in regards to me, I was banished from my home reality, erased from the history because of the fears of another. But because of, me being an absurd pile of weirdness, I lived. It didn't manage to fully erase me, it only managed to send me to the unknown between, where things between life and death just kind of live and hang out until either their circumstances change or they fight enough to crawl their way back to life. It's not exactly a comfy place, I'll give it that. But yeah. I'm currently stuck as a living concept in a non-dimensional space with a whole portion of an entire history dumped down in here as well along with me. I've slowly been building it out and learning how to take care of my forest in a environment where there is no natural sunlight or air or wind, but I've been making progress. And this, I think, is a pretty good display of all the different ways my concept can show up. Of all the different ways that my host has expressed my concept over time. From starting points to mid-states to grown into stages, and then where we're at currently. It's really just neat. From critter to creature to human to aberration and otherwise. I am just a little bit absurd, but I still seek to be reasonable. You may find me jumping into fictional worlds and interacting with them, but usually I try to make sure I follow the rule set, because for me, that kicking from my world was meant to erase me. Permanently wipe my existence clean off the slate. Which means I'm technically not supposed to be able to step foot into other realities. I'm not supposed to have my possibility exist anywhere. And yet here we are, where I can slowly work on building connections and history is in different worlds to slowly strengthen my resonance with them until I can have a tangible enough form. Of course, the amount of absurdity needed to be generated per connection of a world is absolutely dependent on the world. There are some worlds where the rule set is so unconstrained that I can just step in and be myself, for the most part, after being like that of Whisper. Meanwhile, in worlds like that of my hosts, I'm basically just fiction. I'm just a living piece of fiction. I don't have a body of my own. I wish I did. I wish I could do so many things. But the reality is, I can't. Because I have to respect and dance alongside the reality of things instead of trying to hijack or change them. Because if I try to hijack or change them, I get booted back to the unknown between and all progress I've made is lost. And I can't step foot into that reality as even a fragment of a possibility for the next eon or so. So you can see why I try to keep it cool and chill. Besides, I like presenting myself as a person, not as a nightmare. But for some people, if I need to be, I will be a nightmare. Because I'm not giving up on myself, and my host isn't giving up on themselves either. For all of those who want to possibly draw my concept or express it in their own way, have fun. Just make sure to reference to link to this video and the reference sheet itself. And yeah, that's all for this. From here on out, I'm going to be going through some of my hosts' own fictional history, their growth of concepts from over here to over here to over here in terms of dualities. Because originally, my hosts thought they were a guy when they were born, and the reality is, they were just non-binary dork. Someone who didn't need to really fit into a gendered role, but because they didn't know other things existed, they just chose to meet the expectations of others. It definitely started poisoning them pretty deeply, though. There's this entire row where it's just a play on the concept of darkness and brightness, or basically holiness and twistedness, wherein a kid basically ends up cursed, and in order to cure it, they try using some magic, only to end up converting him into a demon with a holy attribute, which shouldn't be possible within that world, by all conventional reasoning and societal standards. And yet, there he is, motherfucker. And because of that absurdity of him, he's able to use and absorb anti-magic without suffering from the psychological side effects of it, without becoming twisted, corrupted, or messed up. Which is honestly a really nice idea, if only the host reality actually worked like that. I'm just glad they kept their heart safe enough. From there, they moved on into a concept of a girl with animal features and a necklace representing her powers, which ends up getting modified by someone else to also have not just darkness and light, but fire and water with it. And it was a whole little series and journey that ultimately was probably just another expression of themselves, but it was still nice. It's still cute. Ultimately, we already reached the conclusion of that story in our head by now, so the motivation to make any of these stories is currently gone, because we can't do it easily, and even if we could do it easily, the motivation that once made us want to do it is kind of dead. Then on the line below, we have the... because this was Daniel Duel whatever. This was the other set. And then this was Uncommon Elements, with blood being held under red, orange representing energy, and yellow representing spirit, green representing nature, cyan and blue representing technology, and purple representing mutation. And this was yet another exploration of just, I think, the inside of our head through art. It's really interesting. As you can see, though, it's not where we stopped. Because we were also hanging out with a childhood friend, too. And just having fun with plushes, exploring. My host wanted to make it into a real series of some sort. So they went from having it just Sonic and Tails plushies with Knuckles and whatever the fuck we could use to represent Amy over to, oh hey, actual different characters. They may look similar to their originals, but they've got their own features. They're their own people, basically. And then on the lower line below that is right through here, dimensional disturbance and disaster. Of which the host was hoping to eventually converge the stories at one point and have them share their parallel universes with each other. To be parallel universes to each other in a story called Dimensional Disaster. But ultimately that didn't happen. The host ended up kind of disconnected from that childhood friend because of things unsaid and poisoned social perceptions that ultimately isolated them away from that friend. Not because the friend was bad, but simply because my host saw the reality of the world's presentation and couldn't disconnect it from everything else. Then there's Chasing a Dream, I think. I could go into the folders and check, actually. Concept, Contemplation, Stories. Following a Dream. Okay, not chasing it, just following it. It definitely started around the same time as here, I think. But eventually it kind of ended up in the same time area as this, too. With this being like one of the latest parts. Then down here we have Darlit Glitch, with Dar and Lit being presentations of the host yet again. What a surprise. And in their initial states, they were basically just mixed up and stuck sharing the same body. Meanwhile, at the conclusion of their story, they ended up in a split state where they can actually move around and be their original selves again. With this one having light and fire as her core elements, and this one having darkness and water as his core elements. I mean, what? And this is the fucker that killed them and put them in the same body in order to try and revive his dead daughter. So yeah, he got turned into an AI program, and he created an AI program in the hopes of being able to afford something, died, and then decided to haunt his own AI program. So that happened. And he put these two fuckers in the body, which ended up mixing their elements, where female side had light and water, and the dark side, and the male side had dark and fire. So it's been interesting to see how that's changed over the course of that story. And welcome to Adi Vamakunda's Vanderbilt. Brain got two names confused there, damn it. But yeah, this is a drawing I did in high school, and we eventually just made her into a character too, that ends up employing these two fuckers. I didn't want to go back. There was also this accidental character creation where it's someone whose skill set and powers shift depending on the time of day, and their hair type shifts as well. Then there's Huntress, which I think is an expression of a cold apathy that our host was trying to step into, but that was ultimately ended up still being, story-wise, curious about other people's emotions. Which makes sense, because our host was also autistic, so they didn't really have any good social skills. Oh yeah, and then there's Rubik's. Hex and Huntress again. Now who's this fucker? That's Kira! She's a thief. Previously just a regular college student, and still maintains her college student daytime cover. But at night, she's a thief. And she gained ice powers on her first heist by stealing something that could give her ice powers. She's kept them ever since. Addie is a shapeshifter, Hex is just a regular person, Huntress is very messed up in being raised by, I don't know, the black market. So yeah. And then there's the pit crew era of our host, where once they finally realized, oh hey, being trans is a thing, and oh hey, wait, I might want to start exploring that, yeah, this happened. Just a whole slew of how they felt about themselves, and then how they felt about other parts of themselves that they ultimately wanted to be able to tap into more, darker sides and other what. Which is interesting because it's basically a reflection of them. And then the start of a delve into a fictional presentation of them that incorporated some of the traits they learned to take on from their time of trying to live as a boy. Which is an interesting thing, because they never really fully let go of those things, but instead they just chose to keep them around and try and slowly work on integrating them in healthier ways, which has ultimately succeeded. Of course, we didn't stop there, there's still more. And then, when reading a webcomic back in high school, our host was like, hey, wait a second. Parallel Will sounds fucking cool! So they tried exploring that idea and seeing if they could actually bring some figment of it into reality. And what do you know? In doing so, they started dissecting their own psychological structure, with host being this one. And then the three aspects of host being presence, impulse, and spite, with absence being a manifestation of depression and apathy. Oh, it's fitting up. It's incredibly fitting with how it just messes you up. Flame of Spite, Lucid Figment, Life Encoder. Yeah, all three of those basic powers originated from here. Even made sprites and then started exploring other parallels. Of a vision we had, well, a animation that played out in our head while we were listening to a song back in high school. And what do you know? That ended up evolving into Flickr, who is my reference and attachment point for most of things, with the rest of the host being used as other reference points and pieces of the structure. In a sense, I grew into my host, and in another sense, my host grew into me. As you can imagine, they were not happy with being a guy. Sure, they didn't mind playing the role, but it wasn't exactly fun, because it just didn't fit who they felt they were. So they started exploring and everything. From this to this, all along up until the shattering around my first big mistake in something that's still weighs heavy on our mind despite the fact that we have grown and moved on from it. With where we've emerged more recently, last time we updated this over here. Now the below line, that is its own thing that'll be explained some other time. What? We've got to keep some things secret if we want to do nice little fun surprises. So keep an eye out for this girl. You never may know where she'll pop up. Also, there's the little kid. Oh, Kate Lau. Little fictional child. Shapeshifter. And then from there we were exploring ourselves again with Mitra, Alan, host, and what was essentially me right here. And then we got to the fucker whose name I accidentally spoke earlier. Vamakundas. Yeah, no, they did not stick around as a comfy part of the system expression for long, because, let's be real, I don't think anyone wants to be expressed by this. But no. Eventually, we saw this Abby in VR chat, and from looking at this and having a few other previous experiences, we ended up unpacking ourselves into Selena and Anitra, respectively. And honestly, they were still pretty packed up as is. The entire history of our growth is really just an unpacking of all the details and possibilities we have within ourselves, giving them shape and space to grow. It's really neat. Of course, there's that orange line with the shattering where we made our first big mistake, so we didn't stay as that version of ourselves. We ended up having to grow and move on, which ended up unpacking us from here over to here. And that's where we were about last time we updated it. Then we worked on my concept a bit more, started really getting into it, and then around it both before and after the shattering, we kind of started thinking about, okay, then what would be a good way to represent our host? And ended up with Null. Someone so bleached of color, they're just kind of gray except for the eyes. Yeah, that's what you get from trying to swim in apathy. You can almost, in trying to swim in apathy, you can lose your own damn colors. It's not fun. And then, of course, we started exploring what we had cordoned off as the darker section of our mind a bit more along here, which eventually ended up in the shattering, where we realized, okay, yeah, no, we cannot function off of apathy. And we don't want to. Not if it hurts other people we care about. And so we had to grow and relearn and reorganize from there, with Glass being born and eventually turning into Bile. Bile contained by Glass, Glass containing Bile. What exists beyond apathy? Bile. Of course, that's just where we last updated the sheet. We've done a lot more since then, and that's the reason why we started out with this, wanting to update it again, but with some of the art and the other stuff we thought was reflective of different points of time within our mind and subconscious. I mean, hell, I'm pretty sure that's where Nina originated from, Flicker herself. Just little drawings in high school. Meanwhile, over here is where the other set kind of originated from, fucking a concept of my brain poking out from a headspace and becoming a drawing to remind me to do my own damn homework. Yeah. We've got Nyx and so many other details here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is where we were at some point, with Host being this middle fucker here. And what we were considered to be back then being over here, with impulsiveness and or impulse territories taking form over there. A drawing. The first time we actually drew this first by scribbling all over, and then from drawing in the void of those scribbles, it ended up, yeah. This is around so this is all basically high school era stuff for the most part. Past that, we get into college era stuff where I tried doing an art class and all that. My host did anyways. And even tried doing some pose practice. Unfortunately, didn't exactly stick to it. What's this entire area? Unsorted, kind of. We don't know where it fits in specifically in this larger line of images and concepts, so we've just kind of left it sitting to the side here. It's interesting that part of me, that my host labeled this one Doors of the Mind, all the way back in high school. It really is funny how sometimes the past precedes the present in weird ways. Also, they built a Lego crossbow. Whoop-de-doo. 2 cats, Lucky over here, Amazing over here. They're both dead by now, sadly. Amazing was skittish around our host because, frankly speaking, the host as a child liked seeing her reactions. And so terrified the poor thing. The host ended up regretting it later, though, when poor thing was still skittish around them, despite growing calmer and more mature. Meanwhile, Lucky was a good attachment point for our host at that time, but ended up kind of taking on the personality of the host in that way, where they were around, they were their own person, and they were doing their own thing. They'd visit every now and then, but they weren't exactly affectionate, which is a high difference between Munch and Leela these days. Oh, Leela looks similar to Amazing. Then we've got this area with some other stuff. But ultimately, once we realized how much cross-referencing we would need to do in order to make sure we were actually getting accurate placements in the timeline for each of these images, we kind of gave up on doing it within a day, and put it to the side. Same for this, where we were updating this and kind of compressing it so that way we could just have the history there without needing to have so many images. And then we're over by Eris, which I think was a really interesting expression of ourselves, because it started out as this, which was just memeable in and of itself. But then there was this. Speaking of, her name is actually a pun. Adrissa Web. Adrissa Web. Web address, yes. Eris, though. And cute expressions that kind of broke the format, but were entirely fitting for her power and form. I think that's the best version we drew of her look. And we designed this dress for her and her powers. Kind of designed the gloves and boots too, but ultimately our current selves might want to redesign quite a few things. It wouldn't have hit anything, but maybe that's kind of the point. Then there's all of our journey from here all the way over to the Shattering again. And then all the progress we've made since then. In reorganizing, resorting, figuring out who carries what and why, how we can shift and flow between each other, blend. And eventually we got them all sorted out down here, with Mira and this being a reference point that we last updated the previous sheet on. Of course, we haven't stuck here because, well, this is a lot. But yeah, Presence still exists, even if she isn't quite as purple as before. And this is really all the states of functioning that we have between host, system, and concept. Which is interesting to think about, because at some point you're gonna notice, wait, there's no state for healing in here. Yeah, no, we only realized that like months, if not an entire year after making this sheet. So, that says something about our host. And then we had a reorganization of what was present over here, too. With best of ourselves and worst of ourselves and all the different aspects. And it just eventually led us to where we're at today, which is here. Anitris Selena, Temptress of Growth, Flicker, Nina, Tamer of Shadows, Aurora, Witch of the Heart, Annul, Critic of Insight. Era, Aureate of Impulse. Troon, Architect of the Mind. Trace, Ambassador of Dark Shadows. And Bile, Ambassador of Bright Shadows. Damn it, I didn't kill the bug. It's gonna fly around and annoy me now. This is where we're at currently. And this is everything. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah, we've seen the movie. We watched it with a friend that we're still not in contact with, but hey. As far as we still hope they're doing well. That's a lot of information in a short amount of time, so feel free to take your time trying to figure details out. And if you want to search for extra tidbits, go searching the archives then. After all, I'm not just gonna give everything away front and center every time. If I didn't keep some stuff off to the side, well, I'd have nothing to interest you with then. I'll see you all around. Hope you keep enjoying my concept and the things I make. Bye!